The wind howled like 1,000 wolves tearing through the Kansas plains, slamming against the frail walls of the little farmhouse that had seen too much pain and too little love these past few years. Mary Collins pressed her palm against the window, staring at the horizon where black clouds twisted and churned like something alive. Her heart thumped against her ribs as she whispered a trembling prayer, "Lord, not again, please not tonight." Ever since her husband, Ben, had died in that tractor accident 2 winters ago, she'd been fighting every battle alone, raising their son, tending the failing crops, and trying to keep the bank from taking what little they had left. But now, as the skies turned green and the wind screamed through the trees, a new battle was coming, one she wasn't sure she could win. Inside the kitchen, the lantern flickered weakly as little Toby clung to her skirt. "Mama, is the storm gonna take the house?" he asked, his eyes wide with fear. Mary forced a smile she didn't feel. "Not if we pray hard enough, baby. Go grab Mama's Bible." She turned her face away so he wouldn't see the tear that slipped down her cheek. The radio crackled on the counter, spitting out the urgent voice of the weatherman, "Tornado warning for Dry Creek County. Take cover immediately. Repeat, take cover now." The air outside carried that eerie stillness that always came before destruction, the kind that made the birds silent and the world hold its breath. Mary grabbed Toby's hand and pulled him toward the cellar door. But as she reached for the latch, a sound sliced through the storm, a faint cry for help. She froze. It was barely audible through the roar of the wind, but it was there. Someone was out there. "Mama," Toby whispered. "You hear that?" She did. And her heart split in 2 directions, protect her child, or save a stranger. She bit her lip so hard she tasted blood. Then, with a deep breath, she made her choice. "Toby, get in the cellar and stay there till Mama comes back. No matter what, you don't come out." "But Mama." "No buts." Her voice trembled but stayed firm. "You be my brave boy now." She threw on her worn coat, grabbed the lantern, and pushed out the door into the chaos. The moment she stepped outside, the wind nearly ripped her off her feet. Dust and debris stung her face like knives. Her hair whipped around as she shouted into the darkness, "Hello? Anyone out here?" For a moment, there was nothing but the growl of the storm. Then she saw him, a figure staggering down the dirt road, half covered in mud, clutching his arm. His horse lay on its side nearby, unmoving. Without thinking, Mary ran toward him, boots sinking into the soaked ground. When she reached him, he collapsed to his knees. His hat blew off, revealing a rugged face streaked with blood and rain. "You shouldn't be out here," he rasped, trying to push her away. "The twister's coming." "So are you," she shot back. "Can you walk?" He blinked at her, dazed. "Not far." "That's far enough." She slung his arm over her shoulder and half dragged, half carried him back toward the house. The wind screamed louder now, and in the distance, she saw it, a dark funnel dropping from the clouds, massive and merciless. Her heart lurched, but she didn't stop. Step by step, she forced her body forward, lungs burning, until they stumbled through the front door. She shoved him inside and slammed it shut just as the windows rattled like they might explode. "Cellar," she shouted. "Now." They stumbled down the wooden steps just as the roar hit full force, a sound like a freight train tearing through the sky. The stranger winced, clutching his side. Toby's eyes were round as saucers when he saw the man. "Mama, who's that?" "Someone who needed help," she said, pulling them both close as the ground above trembled. For what felt like forever, the storm raged. The cellar door creaked. Dust fell from the ceiling. The stranger looked at Mary through the flickering lantern light, her face smeared with dirt, her arms trembling but strong around her son. There was something in her eyes he hadn't seen in years, fear, yes, but also fierce determination. When at last the rumble faded into silence, Mary exhaled shakily. "It's over," she whispered. They emerged to a world unrecognizable. The barn was gone, half the roof torn away, trees snapped like matchsticks. Mary pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from crying out. "Oh Lord," she breathed. Toby clung to her, and for the first time, she realized she was shaking. The stranger stood beside her, favoring one leg, his shirt torn and bloodied. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "You shouldn't have risked yours." She looked at him, exhaustion and defiance mixing in her eyes. "Ain't the first time I've had to fight to keep someone alive," she said softly. He studied her then, something unreadable in his gaze. "You got courage, ma'am." She managed a small, tired smile. No. Just a boy who needs his mama. The man nodded, glancing toward the horizon where faint sunlight now broke through the wreckage. Name's Luke, he said. Luke McGraw. Mary blinked. The name meant nothing to her then, but one day soon, it would change everything. The morning sun spilled across the wrecked fields like a promise half-kept, painting gold over ruin. Birds were singing again, timid but brave, as if testing whether the world still worked. Mary Collins stood on her porch with her arms wrapped around herself, staring at what the storm had done. The barn was nothing but splinters, the chicken coop was gone, and her small patch of corn was flattened. But she was alive, and Toby was alive, and somehow, so was the stranger she dragged out of the storm. Inside the kitchen, the scent of coffee mixed with the faint smell of rain and wood dust. Luke McGraw sat at the table, his arm bandaged, his face freshly washed but still bruised. There was a quiet strength about him that filled the small room, the kind that didn't need to be spoken aloud. He looked up when Mary entered, hatless, with her hair falling loose over her shoulders. "Mornin'," he said softly, his voice low, rough like gravel but gentle all the same. "Mornin'," she replied, pouring him a cup. "Storm didn't take you, so I'd say you're lucky." He gave a faint smile. "You're the lucky one for draggin' me in before it did." They shared a small silence broken only by Toby's footsteps as he came running in, holding a small wooden horse, one of the few toys that had survived the night. "Mama, can Mr. Luke stay with us?" Mary hesitated. "We don't have much room left, son." Luke looked between them, then down at his hands. "Don't mean to impose. I'll head out soon as my leg lets me." But Mary shook her head. "Ain't no man fit to ride with ribs busted and half a county torn up. You'll stay till you're healed." He looked at her long and hard then, like he wasn't used to people offering kindness without wanting something in return. He nodded slowly. "Much obliged, ma'am. The days that followed were hard, but in the way that builds something new from what's broken. Mary worked from dawn till dusk clearing debris, salvaging what she could, and patching what couldn't be saved. Luke helped where his strength allowed, repairing fences, chopping fallen wood, tending the animals that had survived. Toby followed him everywhere, asking questions faster than Luke could answer. "Did you really ride across the plains by yourself? Have you ever shot a rattlesnake? How'd you get that scar?" Luke just chuckled, shaking his head. "You got more questions than bullets in my rifle, boy." At night, when the crickets sang, Mary would sit on the porch with her hands wrapped around a chipped mug, staring at the stars. Sometimes Luke joined her, limping slowly from the barn. They didn't talk much, but there was comfort in the silence. A strange peace. One night, she finally asked the question that had been nagging her since the storm. "Where were you headed that night?" Luke leaned back, looking out at the dark horizon. "Business," he said simply. "What kind of business?" He hesitated. "The kind that keeps me ridin' from sunup to sundown. Cattle, land, and people who think they can take what don't belong to 'em." She smiled faintly. "Sounds like you've got your hands full." He nodded. "Always." Then after a pause, "What about you, Mary? Why's a woman like you livin' way out here alone?" Her eyes clouded. "My husband passed 2 winters ago. Tractor flipped on him while he was tryin' to fix the fence line. Been me and Toby ever since." Luke looked at her, his jaw tightening slightly. "Sorry to hear that. World's got a cruel way of talkin', good folks." Mary gave a soft sigh. "Yeah. But I can't afford to sit and weep. There's work to do, and a boy to raise. Life don't pause for grief." Luke studied her for a moment longer, then nodded with quiet respect. "You're tougher than most men I know." She smiled, small but real. "You ain't seen me cryin' over broken eggs and burned coffee." That earned her a laugh, deep and warm, the first she'd heard from him. Weeks passed, and little by little, things began to grow again, grass, trust, even laughter. Mary noticed how Luke seemed to know his way around things most men in Dry Creek didn't: contracts, cattle prices, bank policies. One morning, she caught him writing something at the table. "You write like a lawyer," she teased. He grinned. "Guess you could say I've signed my share of papers." Then one day, a black carriage rolled down the dirt road, a sight rare enough to make Toby run shouting for his mama. Out stepped 2 well-dressed men in fine coats, one holding a ledger. "Mr. McGraw," one called. Mary blinked. "They're lookin' for you." Luke stood, face unreadable. Guess the cat's out of the bag. The men approached, tipping their hats. Sir, we've finalized the purchase of the East Ridge lots. The county surveyor sent confirmation. Mary's mouth fell open. Purchase, she repeated, her voice soft but stunned. Luke rubbed the back of his neck, looking sheepish. Reckon I should have told you. I own McGraw Holdings. Half the ranches from here to Cedar Valley are under my name. She stared at him, her hands trembling slightly. You mean, all this time, you're the man folks whisper about in town? The one who buys up land like it's candy. He looked her in the eye. I never meant to hide it from you. I just needed to know if someone could look at me and see a man, not a fortune. Mary turned away, her heart racing with confusion, pride, and something dangerously close to hurt. For weeks she'd seen him as a stranger who shared her work and her pain, a man like any other. Now he stood before her as someone she couldn't quite reach. You're still the man I found bleeding in the rain, she said finally. Money don't change that. Luke took a step closer. I was gonna ride out once I healed. But then I saw the way you fight, the way you keep this place alive. Mary, you got more grit than any woman I've ever met. And I ain't been able to think of much else since. Her lips parted, breath catching. The wind rustled through the fields, gentle this time, carrying the scent of new life. I don't need a savior, Luke, she whispered. Just someone who'll stand beside me. He smiled faintly. Then that's exactly what I'll do. That summer, the Collins farm, once beaten and broken, bloomed again. Luke rebuilt the barn, brought new horses, and helped Mary replant her fields. He never boasted, never acted like she owed him. And when the county fair came, folks stared as Mary Collins walked through town beside the man they now knew owned half the land, but who still carried her son on his shoulders and called her, ma'am, with quiet reverence. In the evenings, they'd sit on the porch as the sun melted into gold across the horizon. Toby would chase fireflies while Luke strummed his guitar softly. Mary would smile, a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in years. The storm had taken much, but it had also brought her something she never expected, hope. One night, as the crickets sang and the stars burned bright, Luke took her hand gently. You ever think storms come to tear down what's weak so we can build what's meant to last? He asked. She looked up at him, eyes glistening. If that's true, then maybe this was the best storm of my life. He leaned in, kissed her forehead, and whispered, then let's make sure it wasn't in vain. The wind whispered through the fields again, not in anger this time, but in peace, like even the heavens were finally at rest.